The radio crackled to life at 2:15 in the morning, jolting Detective Marcus Williams from his coffee break. His partner, Detective Lisa Carter, looked up from her paperwork as Captain Ray Johnson's voice filled their patrol car with urgent commands. Someone had called in a tip about illegal alien technology being stored in a house on Maple Street. The caller claimed to have seen strange lights and heard weird sounds coming from the basement. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes and started the engine. It had been 3 years since Earth joined the Galactic Federation, after proving themselves in the Third Sector War. Since then, smuggling alien tech had become a serious problem. Black market dealers sold everything from Zephyrian pulse weapons to stolen Federation communication devices. The penalties were severe because some of this technology could level city blocks if used wrong. Lisa checked her scanner as they drove through the empty Detroit streets. The renovated downtown area looked peaceful under the streetlights. Most of the old buildings had been fixed up after the war, and people were slowly moving back into the city. It was hard to believe that just a few years ago, alien ships had been fighting overhead while humans cowered in basements. They pulled up to a modest 2-story house with a small front yard. Nothing looked suspicious from the outside. The windows were dark, and a single porch light cast a warm glow over the front steps. Captain Johnson was already there with the tactical team, studying blueprints on a tablet. He looked up as Marcus and Lisa approached. "Anonymous tip came in 20 minutes ago," Johnson said quietly. "Caller said they saw blue flashes coming from the basement windows around midnight. Described sounds like Corellian energy weapons charging up. We've got thermal imaging showing one person inside, probably asleep on the second floor." Marcus nodded and checked his weapon. Standard procedure for alien tech raids required full tactical gear, because they never knew what they might face. Some smugglers booby-trapped their stashes with exotic explosives that could turn a house into a crater. Others had alien bodyguards with advanced armor and weapons that could cut through steel like paper. The tactical team moved into position around the house while Marcus and Lisa took the back exit. Everyone wore helmet cameras and bioscanners that could detect alien technology signatures. The scanners would light up if they found anything that didn't belong on Earth. So far, everything looked normal. Johnson gave the signal, and the front door exploded inward under the battering ram. The tactical team rushed inside with weapons raised, shouting standard warnings. Marcus and Lisa followed close behind, sweeping the ground floor for threats. The living room was neat and simple, with comfortable furniture and family photos on the walls. They heard footsteps upstairs and voices calling out. Someone was awake now, probably terrified by the sudden invasion. Marcus climbed the stairs carefully, his weapon ready but not aimed directly at anything. They had learned to be more careful since joining the Federation. Too many raids had gone wrong when officers assumed the worst about people. At the top of the stairs, they found a middle-aged black man standing calmly in the hallway. He wore simple pajamas and showed no signs of panic or fear. Most people would be screaming or running when armed officers broke down their door. This man just stood there with his hands visible, waiting patiently for them to speak. "Are you Antoine Davis?" Lisa asked, checking her notes. "Yes, I am," the man replied in a steady voice. "May I ask what this is about?" Before anyone could answer, the bioscanner on Marcus's helmet started beeping rapidly. The sound meant it had detected alien technology nearby, but not the usual smuggled weapons or communication devices. This was something else entirely, something the scanner had never encountered before. "Sir, we're going to need you to step back while we search the premises," Johnson said as he reached the top of the stairs. "We have reports of illegal alien technology being stored here." Antoine Davis raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. He stepped aside and gestured for them to proceed. His calm reaction was unusual, but Marcus had seen stranger things during raids. Some people just handled stress better than others. The tactical team spread out through the second floor, checking each room methodically. Marcus entered what appeared to be the master bedroom. It was simple and clean, with a large bed, a dresser, and a closet. His scanner was still beeping, getting louder as he approached the closet door. He opened the closet carefully, expecting to find hidden weapons or stolen Federation tech. Instead, he found normal clothes hanging on wooden hangers. Shirts, pants, jackets, and at the far end, something that made his scanner go completely crazy with alarm sounds. Hanging at the back of the closet was a robe unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It looked like a judge's robe, but the fabric seemed to shimmer with its own light. Strange symbols were woven into the material, symbols that hurt to look at directly. The bioscanner was screaming now, detecting energy signatures that shouldn't exist on Earth. "Captain," Marcus called out, his voice tight with confusion. "You need to see this." Johnson appeared in the doorway, followed by Lisa and two tactical officers. They all stared at the Robe in silence as their scanners went wild. The energy readings were off the charts, but not in a dangerous way. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't a weapon. Lisa stepped closer and read the data streaming across her helmet display. Her face went pale as she processed the information. "Marcus, according to these readings, this Robe is registered in the Galactic Federation database." "So?" Johnson asked. "Lots of Federation tech is registered." "Not like this," Lisa whispered. "This isn't just any Federation technology. These biosignatures indicate this Robe belongs to a Galactic Supreme Court justice." The room fell silent except for the continuing beeps of their scanners. Marcus felt his stomach drop as the implications hit him. There were only 12 Supreme Court justices in the entire galaxy, and they presided over the most important legal cases in known space. They were chosen from the wisest and most respected beings across hundreds of worlds. Johnson turned to look at Antoine Davis, who was still standing calmly in the hallway. "Sir, I think we need to have a very different conversation." Antoine Davis walked calmly into his bedroom and looked at the Robe hanging in his closet. The officers stepped back instinctively, their hands still near their weapons but no longer pointing them at anyone. The air in the room felt heavy with questions that nobody knew how to ask. "I suppose my secret is out," Antoine said with a small smile. He reached past the officers and gently touched the shimmering fabric. As soon as his fingers made contact, the Robe began to glow more brightly, and new symbols appeared across its surface. "This is the Robe of Judgment, worn only by members of the Galactic Supreme Court." Marcus felt like the world had shifted beneath his feet. He had been a cop for 15 years and thought he had seen everything. Gang wars, alien refugees, even some Federation diplomats passing through the city. But this was completely beyond his experience. "You're telling us you're a galactic judge?" "The correct title is Supreme Tribunal Justice," Antoine replied. "I was appointed 3 years ago, shortly after Earth joined the Federation. The appointment requires absolute secrecy to prevent political interference and protect my family from those who might wish to influence galactic justice." Captain Johnson activated his emergency communicator, connecting directly to federal headquarters in Washington. While he spoke in hushed tones to his superiors, Lisa kept staring at the Robe. Her scanner was still displaying data streams that she barely understood, but one thing was clear. This wasn't some elaborate fake or stolen artifact. The biosignatures were genuine Federation technology at the highest classification level. "How is this possible?" Lisa asked. "Earth just joined the Federation 3 years ago. They wouldn't put a human on their Supreme Court that quickly." Antoine sat down on the edge of his bed, looking suddenly tired. The appointment came after a very specific case. A Corellian war criminal named Vex Murdoch had been captured after attacking human colonies in the Outer Rim. He had killed thousands of civilians, including children. The Federation wanted to execute him immediately, but I was assigned to review the case as a local Earth judge. Marcus remembered the name from news reports. Vex Murdoch had been one of the most wanted criminals in the galaxy, responsible for destroying entire settlements. His capture had been big news on Earth, but the trial details had been kept classified. "What did you do?" "I surprised everyone," Antoine continued. "Instead of recommending execution, I sentenced him to life imprisonment with mandatory rehabilitation therapy. The Corellians were outraged, thinking I was too soft. Many humans thought I should have demanded blood for blood, but I believed that true justice meant stopping the cycle of violence, not continuing it." Johnson finished his call and rejoined the group. His expression was grim but no longer suspicious. "I just spoke with Director Collins at Federal Security. Everything you're saying checks out, but I have about 100 more questions." Antoine nodded and stood up. "Follow me downstairs. I'll show you how this all works." They moved as a group through the house, with the tactical team maintaining a protective formation out of habit. Nothing felt normal anymore. The simple family home they had raided was apparently the secret residence of one of the most powerful legal authorities in the known galaxy. In the basement, Antoine opened a hidden panel behind what looked like a water heater. The wall slid aside to reveal a room filled with technology that definitely didn't come from Earth. Holographic displays showed star maps and legal documents in dozens of alien languages. A large chair sat in the center, surrounded by communication arrays that could reach anywhere in the galaxy. "This is where I conduct most of my galactic duties," Antoine explained. "The quantum communication system allows me to participate in trials and legal proceedings without leaving Earth, my colleagues believe. I live on a Federation station near the galactic core." Lisa walked around the room in amazement. "But why keep it secret? Being a galactic judge would be a huge honor for humanity." "Because politics would destroy everything," Antoine replied sadly. "Can you imagine what would happen if Earth's governments knew they had direct access to galactic justice? Every nation would try to pressure me to rule in their favor. Corporations would offer bribes. Criminal organizations would try to kidnap my family." Marcus understood the logic, but something else was bothering him. "If you're so important and secret, why did someone call in a tip about alien technology? How did they know to target this house?" Antoine's expression darkened. "That's what worries me. Very few people know about my dual identity: the Federation Council, a handful of Earth security officials, and my immediate family. If someone leaked my location, it means we have a serious problem." Johnson was studying the communication equipment with growing concern. "These systems would be worth millions on the black market. If criminals found out what you have here, they would stop at nothing to steal it." "Worse than that," Antoine said. "I'm currently presiding over the most important case in galactic history. The trial of the Voidborn Empire for systematic genocide against 12 species in the Outer Rim. The evidence is overwhelming, and my judgment could determine the fate of billions of beings." The name Voidborn made everyone in the room tense. They were one of the few alien species that had refused to join the Federation, preferring to expand their territory through conquest and destruction. Intelligence reports suggested they had infiltrated governments across the galaxy, working to undermine Federation unity from within. "You think the Voidborn are behind the tip?" Marcus asked. "It's possible," Antoine replied. "They have agents everywhere, and they know that eliminating a Supreme Tribunal justice would delay their trial indefinitely. Under galactic law, all 12 justices must be present for a genocide verdict." Lisa checked her communication device and found several missed messages from dispatch. "Captain, we're getting reports of suspicious activity in the neighborhood. Unknown vehicles spotted on nearby streets, and someone reported seeing figures moving through backyards." Johnson immediately activated his tactical radio. "All units, possible hostile presence in the area. Establish a security perimeter around this location immediately." Antoine moved to his communication console and began activating various systems. "If the Voidborn know where I am, they won't wait long to act. They've already invested too much in this operation to retreat now." As if summoned by his words, a low humming sound began to emanate from outside the house. Through the basement windows, they could see strange blue lights moving through the darkness. The lights were too bright and too organized to be normal vehicles. "Those aren't Earthships," Marcus said, gripping his weapon tighter. Antoine's fingers flew across the alien controls, bringing defensive systems online. Hidden panels throughout the house began to slide open, revealing shield generators and weapon emplacements that had been invisible moments before. "Gentlemen, Detective Carter," Antoine said calmly as alarm signals began flashing on his displays. "I hope you're ready for a fight because the Voidborn just declared war on my courthouse." The blue lights outside grew brighter and more numerous as Antoine worked frantically at his control console. His fingers moved across alien symbols with practiced ease, bringing more defensive systems online with each passing second. The house began to hum with energy as hidden generators powered up throughout the structure. Marcus pressed himself against the basement window and tried to count the enemy forces gathering outside. At least 6 vehicles had landed silently in the neighborhood, their hulls reflecting no light at all. Figures in dark armor moved between the ships with military precision, setting up what looked like siege equipment. "How many are out there?" Captain Johnson asked while checking his ammunition supply. "Too many," Marcus replied grimly, "and they have technology we've never seen before." Lisa was studying the readings on her scanner, trying to understand what they were facing. "These energy signatures are completely different from anything in our Federation database. The Voidborn must have developed new weapons since the last intelligence reports." Antoine paused in his work and turned to face the officers. "What you're seeing outside represents just a small fraction of Voidborn military capability. They've been preparing for this war for centuries. developing weapons and tactics specifically designed to destroy Federation defenses. The communication console suddenly activated itself, displaying an incoming priority message from somewhere in deep space. Antoine accepted the transmission, and a holographic figure appeared in the center of the room. The being looked humanoid but with silver skin and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. "Justice Davis," the figure said urgently, "we have detected void-born forces converging on your location. The tribunal session must continue despite these circumstances." "Understood, Justice Krell," Antoine replied formally. "How long until the final phase of deliberations?" 6 hours at most. The evidence phase is complete, and we are ready for closing arguments. Your presence is essential for the validity of any verdict. Johnson stepped forward, still trying to process everything he was witnessing. "Excuse me, but shouldn't we evacuate Justice Davis to a secure location? This house is about to become a battlefield." The holographic being turned its ancient gaze toward the human captain. "Captain Johnson, I presume. Justice Davis has informed us of your dedication to duty. However, evacuation is impossible. The quantum communication array in this location cannot be moved, and any interruption in Justice Davis's participation would result in a mistrial." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying we have to defend this position for 6 hours against an alien army?" "That is correct," Justice Krell replied solemnly. "The fate of 12 species hangs in the balance. Billions of lives depend on completing this trial." The hologram flickered and disappeared as explosions began echoing from the street outside. Through the windows, they could see void-born soldiers setting up energy cannons aimed directly at the house. The alien warriors moved with deadly efficiency, their black armor making them nearly invisible in the darkness. Antoine activated a wall display showing tactical information about their attackers. The Voidborn deployment includes at least 2 assault squads, a demolitions team, and something called a Wraith-class assassin. That last one is particularly dangerous because it can phase through solid matter. Lisa checked her weapon and activated her armor's defensive systems. "What kind of defenses does this house have?" "Military-grade shield generators, automated defense turrets, and a few surprises that even I don't fully understand," Antoine replied while bringing more systems online. "The Federation equipped this safe house with their best technology, but it was designed to hide me, not withstand a full military assault." The first energy blast struck the house's shields, causing the air to shimmer with deflected power. The impact sent vibrations through the floor and made the lights flicker momentarily. More blasts followed in rapid succession as the Voidborn tested the strength of their target's defenses. Johnson activated his emergency communicator and began coordinating with federal security forces. "This is Captain Johnson requesting immediate backup at the Davis residence. We have confirmed alien hostiles attempting to breach a classified federal facility." "Backup is en route," came the reply, "but the nearest federal units are 40 minutes away. We'll be dead in 40 minutes. Marcus muttered while checking the ammunition supplies they had brought for the raid. Antoine overheard and smiled grimly. "Not necessarily. This house has a few secrets that the Voidborn don't know about." He activated another control panel, and hidden weapon compartments opened throughout the basement. Inside were Federation pulse rifles, energy grenades, and armor systems designed for human physiology. Lisa grabbed one of the pulse rifles and tested its weight. "How do these work?" "Point and shoot, just like your regular weapons but with about 10 times the stopping power," Antoine explained. The Federation designed these specifically for human security forces. The shield generators above them sparked and flickered as the Voidborn assault intensified. Through the tactical display, they could see enemy soldiers moving closer to the house while their heavy weapons continued the bombardment. Red warning lights began flashing as the defensive systems detected multiple breach attempts. "They're trying to find weak points in the shields," Antoine observed while monitoring the attack patterns. Standard Voidborn siege tactics call for concentrated fire on structural weak points followed by infiltration through compromised areas. Marcus strapped on a Federation armor vest and checked the pulse. Rifle's power cell. "How long can the shields hold?" "Under this level of assault, maybe 2 hours," Antoine replied. "But the shields are only our first line of defense." A new alarm began sounding as proximity sensors detected movement in the tunnels beneath the house. The Voidborn had apparently decided to try multiple approaches simultaneously, using underground routes to bypass the shield generators entirely. "They're coming from below," Johnson announced while studying the tactical display. Antoine activated the house's internal defense grid, and steel barriers began sealing off access points throughout the structure. "The basement has independent shields and weapon systems. We can hold this position even if they breach the upper floors." The quantum communication console activated again, this time showing multiple holographic figures from across the galaxy. Judges from a dozen different species looked gravely at Antoine as explosions continued to rock the house around them. Justice Davis spoke a being that looked like a crystalline tree. "We are aware of your situation. The galactic community is watching with great interest to see how humanity responds to this challenge." Antoine straightened his shoulders and looked directly at his fellow judges. "Honored colleagues, humanity has never backed down from a just cause. We will complete this trial regardless of the obstacles placed before us." "Very well," replied Justice Krell. "Let the record show that the trial of the Voidborn Empire resumes in 1 hour. Justice Davis, please prepare your final arguments while defending your position." As the holographic figures disappeared, Marcus shook his head in amazement. "You're going to conduct a galactic trial while fighting for your life?" "Justice doesn't stop for war," Antoine replied firmly. "In fact, war is exactly when justice is most important." The house shuddered under another massive impact, and chunks of plaster fell from the ceiling. Outside, the Voidborn forces were preparing for their final assault, confident that no human defense could withstand their superior technology. They were about to learn why humanity had earned its place among the stars. The first shield generator failed with a shower of sparks and the smell of burning electronics. Through the basement windows, Marcus could see Voidborn soldiers advancing across the lawn, with weapons that looked like they belonged in a nightmare. Their armor seemed to absorb light, making them appear as moving shadows against the darkness. Captain Johnson positioned his officers at strategic points throughout the basement, while Antoine continued working at his control console. The house's remaining defenses were automatically adjusting to compensate for the failed shield, but everyone could feel the building shake more violently with each enemy blast. "How long until the trial resumes?" Lisa asked while testing her pulse rifle's targeting system. 53 minutes, Antoine replied without looking up from his displays. "The other justices are reviewing the final evidence files while we deal with this situation." Marcus crouched behind a makeshift barrier and tried to spot enemy movement through the window. "Antoine, I have to ask, is completing this trial really worth dying for?" Antoine paused in his work and turned to face the young detective. "Marcus, the Voidborn Empire has systematically destroyed 12 entire species. Billions of sentient beings wiped out simply because they refused to surrender their worlds. If we don't stop them here and now, they'll continue their expansion until the entire galaxy is under their control." An explosion rocked the house so violently that everyone was thrown to the floor. Emergency lighting activated as the main power grid fluctuated, casting eerie red shadows across the basement. Through the tactical display, they could see that the Voidborn had brought up heavier weapons, including something that registered as a quantum demolition device. "That's not good," Antoine muttered while checking the defensive systems. "Quantum demolition devices can tear holes in reality itself. The house shields won't stop that kind of attack." Johnson grabbed his communicator and tried to contact federal backup forces. "This is Captain Johnson. We need immediate air support at our location. The hostiles have weapons of mass destruction." "Negative, Captain," came the reply. "All federal aircraft are grounded due to alien energy interference. Ground units are still 30 minutes out." Lisa moved to another window and activated her helmet's enhanced vision system. "I count at least 20 hostiles in the immediate area, plus whatever they have in those ships. We're seriously outnumbered." The quantum weapon outside began charging with a sound like reality tearing apart. Energy readings on Antoine's displays went off the scale as the Voidborn prepared to punch a hole straight through the house's defenses. Everyone in the basement could feel the air itself beginning to vibrate with unnatural power. "Everyone get behind the quantum barriers," Antoine ordered while activating emergency protocols. Steel walls several feet thick rose from the floor, creating a protective shell around the communication equipment. "If that weapon breaches the main shields, we'll need every bit of protection we can get." Marcus helped Lisa drag their equipment behind the barriers while Johnson coordinated with the tactical team upstairs. The house's automated defense turrets were firing continuously now, their energy blasts lighting up the night as they tried to drive back the advancing Voidborn soldiers. The quantum weapon fired with a sound that hurt to hear. The beam passed straight through the house's energy shields as if they didn't exist, striking the north wall with enough force to vaporize a 10-foot section of the structure. Debris rained down as the house's structural integrity systems activated emergency repairs. "They're inside," Johnson reported over the radio. "Voidborn soldiers are coming through the breach on the first floor." Antoine activated the house's internal defense grid, sealing blast doors throughout the structure and activating automated weapon systems in every room. "The house will fight them room by room while we hold the basement. Our quantum barriers should protect the communication equipment even if they reach us." Through the tactical display, they could watch green dots representing the house's defenses engaging red dots representing enemy soldiers. The battle moved through the first floor like a deadly game of chess, with each room becoming a battlefield as the Voidborn advanced toward the basement stairs. "How are you holding up?" Lisa asked Antoine as he continued preparing for the trial. "Surprisingly well," he replied while reviewing legal documents on his personal tablet. "I've always worked better under pressure." A new alarm began sounding as motion sensors detected something moving through the house's ventilation system. The signature was different from the other Voidborn soldiers, moving with an unnatural fluidity that suggested it wasn't entirely solid. "The Wraith Assassin," Antoine said grimly. "It can phase through solid matter, which means it can bypass all our physical defenses." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "How do we fight something that can walk through walls?" "Carefully," Antoine replied while activating a new set of defensive systems. "The house has some experimental weapons designed specifically for incorporeal entities. We've never tested them in combat, but theoretical simulations suggest they should work." The ventilation alarm stopped suddenly, indicating that whatever had been moving through the system had exited somewhere inside the house. Emergency sensors throughout the structure began reporting anomalous readings as the Wraith Assassin moved closer to its target. Johnson positioned himself near the basement stairs while Marcus and Lisa covered the other possible entry points. The quantum barriers hummed with protective energy, but everyone knew that conventional defenses wouldn't stop something that could phase through solid matter. "Antoine," Marcus called softly. "How much longer until the trial?" 37 minutes, Antoine replied while making final preparations at his communication console. "Win or lose, we need to hold this position for 37 more minutes." The lights in the basement suddenly flickered and went out completely, leaving them in darkness except for the glow from Antoine's equipment. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but the brief blackout had been a clear message from their attackers. "They're in the basement," Lisa whispered while scanning the room with her weapons targeting system. The temperature in the room began to drop noticeably as something invisible moved among them. Frost formed on the walls and ceiling as the Wraith Assassin's presence affected the local environment. Everyone could feel eyes watching them from the darkness, but their sensors couldn't lock onto anything solid enough to target. Antoine activated the experimental anti-incorporeal weapons with a series of quick commands. The air around them began to shimmer with energy fields designed to force phase-shifted beings back into normal reality. Somewhere in the darkness, they heard a sound like breaking glass as the Wraith Assassin was suddenly made visible. The creature stood 7 feet tall with elongated limbs and eyes that burned like cold fire. Its body seemed to be made of living shadow held together by malevolent will. For a moment, it stared directly at Antoine with obvious hatred, before raising weapons that looked like crystallized darkness. "Now!" Johnson shouted, and all 4 humans opened fire simultaneously. The basement exploded with the light of pulse rifle fire and energy weapons, as the battle for galactic justice entered its final phase. Outside, more Voidborn forces were landing. But inside the basement, humanity was making its stand for the principles that had earned them a place among the stars. The quantum communication console activated automatically, and holographic figures of galactic judges appeared around the room, even as the firefight continued. The trial of the Voidborn Empire was about to begin, whether anyone was ready or not. The Wraith Assassin moved like liquid darkness as pulse rifle fire lit up the basement. Its body seemed to flow around the energy blasts, reforming instantly whenever the experimental weapons forced it into solid form. Marcus kept firing while backing toward the quantum barriers, trying to put some distance between himself and the nightmare creature stalking them. Lisa discovered that her scanner could track the assassin's energy signature even when it was phased. She called out targeting information to the others, while laying down covering fire with her pulse rifle. It's moving toward Antoine. Left side behind the water heater. Captain Johnson threw an energy grenade in the indicated direction, and the explosion briefly illuminated the creature's true form. The Wraith assassin looked like death itself had taken physical shape, with claws that could tear through steel and eyes that burned with ancient hatred. It turned toward Johnson with obvious fury. Antoine never stopped working at his communication console, even as chaos erupted around him. The holographic figures of his fellow judges flickered in and out of existence as energy weapons interfered with the quantum communication system. Despite the battle raging in his basement, he calmly reviewed the final evidence files for the most important trial in galactic history. "Justice Davis," spoke the crystalline tree being through the unstable hologram. "We can postpone the proceedings if necessary." "Negative," Antoine replied while diving behind cover as the Wraith assassin fired a weapon that turned the air itself into acid. "The Voidborn chose to attack during our trial. They don't get to delay justice by using violence." Marcus managed to hit the assassin with a direct shot from his pulse rifle, causing the creature to stumble but not fall. The experimental weapons were working, but barely. Each hit forced the Wraith back into solid form for only a few seconds before it could phase again and continue its attack. Through the tactical display, they could see that more Voidborn forces were landing outside. Dropships continued arriving in the neighborhood, disgorging soldiers with weapons that glowed with malevolent energy. The house's automated defenses were being systematically destroyed by superior alien technology. "We can't hold them much longer," Johnson reported, while reloading his weapon. "The upstairs defenses have failed, and they're advancing on our position." Lisa had been studying the Wraith assassin's movement patterns on her scanner. "I think I understand how this thing works. It phases between dimensions to avoid damage, but it has to become solid to attack. If we time our shots right, we can catch it during its attack phases." "Good thinking," Marcus replied while adjusting his weapon's targeting system. "On my mark, everyone concentrate fire on the same spot." The assassin raised its crystalline weapons and prepared to fire another reality-warping blast at Antoine. For a split second, it had to become completely solid to channel the energy through normal space-time. Marcus saw the opportunity and shouted his command. All 4 humans fired at once, their pulse rifles converging on the Wraith assassin's center mass. The creature's shadowy form exploded in a burst of dark energy that left everyone's ears ringing. When the light faded, nothing remained but a scorch mark on the basement floor. "One down," Lisa said grimly while checking her weapon's power cell. "How many more are coming?" Before anyone could answer, the basement stairs exploded in a shower of debris as Voidborn soldiers blasted their way through the reinforced barriers. The first alien warrior through the breach stood 8 feet tall in black armor that seemed to absorb all light. Its weapon looked like a miniature star contained in crystalline housing. Johnson and his tactical team opened fire immediately, their pulse rifles creating a wall of energy between the stairs and Antoine's communication equipment. The Voidborn soldiers returned fire with weapons that turned steel into vapor and concrete into glass. The basement became a storm of energy and destruction. Antoine continued working even as alien weapons fire passed inches from his head. The quantum communication system was finally stabilizing, and the holographic figures of his fellow judges appeared with perfect clarity. Beings from across the galaxy watched as humanity fought desperately to protect one of their own. "Honored colleagues," Antoine said formally while ducking behind his console, "I call this tribunal to order for final deliberations in the case of the Galactic Federation versus the Voidborn Empire." Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Antoine was actually starting the trial while fighting for his life. Energy blasts continued to illuminate the basement as human and alien weapons exchanged deadly fire. But the judge's voice remained calm and professional. "Justice Davis," spoke an ethereal being whose form seemed to be made of pure light. "The evidence phase is complete. The prosecution has demonstrated that the Voidborn Empire systematically destroyed 12 species through coordinated genocide. The defense has offered no evidence to counter these charges." Lisa found cover behind an overturned desk and tried to count the enemy soldiers advancing down the stairs. At least 6 Voidborn warriors had entered the basement, with more following close behind. Their weapons were clearly superior to anything the humans possessed, but the officers refused to give ground. "We're running low on ammunition," Johnson called out during a brief lull in the fighting. Antoine activated another hidden weapons cache, revealing energy cells and backup weapons stored throughout the basement. The Federation equipped this safe house for extended battles. We have enough supplies to last for hours. A Voidborn soldier managed to advance close enough to throw a gravity grenade into the center of the room. The device created a localized black hole that began pulling everything toward its center with irresistible force. Marcus felt his feet leave the ground as the artificial singularity tried to consume the entire basement. Antoine quickly activated emergency gravitational stabilizers built into the house's foundation. The competing forces created a violent energy storm that shattered windows and cracked walls, but the black hole collapsed before it could destroy the communication equipment. "The defense rests," Antoine announced to his fellow judges, while firing his own pulse rifle at the advancing soldiers. "I am ready to present my closing arguments." The alien judges looked at each other with expressions of amazement and respect. Never before had they witnessed someone conducting legal proceedings under such extreme circumstances. Even species known for their courage would have postponed the trial under these conditions. "Justice Davis," spoke Justice Krell with obvious admiration. "Please proceed with your closing arguments." Antoine stood up behind his console, completely ignoring the energy weapons fire passing around him. He looked directly at the holographic figures of his fellow judges and began speaking with the authority of someone who had dedicated his life to justice. "Honored colleagues, the evidence before us is clear. The Voidborn Empire has chosen the path of destruction over the path of civilization. They have demonstrated that they view other species not as equals to be respected, but as obstacles to be eliminated." Marcus and Lisa continued fighting while listening to Antoine's words. Despite the chaos surrounding them, his voice carried absolute conviction and moral authority. This was why the galaxy had chosen a human to serve on their highest court. However, Antoine continued while ducking another energy blast, "Justice is not about revenge. It is about preventing future suffering while offering hope for redemption. I propose that we dissolve the Voidborn Empire while offering rehabilitation to any individuals willing to renounce their genocidal ideology." The Voidborn soldiers seemed to pause in their attack when they heard these words. Even in the midst of battle, the concept of mercy toward their species was something they had never expected to encounter. The Voidborn soldiers in the basement seemed momentarily stunned by Antoine's words about mercy and rehabilitation. In their entire military history, no enemy had ever offered them anything other than destruction or total surrender. The concept of justice combined with compassion was completely foreign to their understanding of warfare. Marcus took advantage of their hesitation to reload his pulse rifle and reposition behind better cover. Lisa continued monitoring the tactical situation while keeping her weapon trained on the alien soldiers. Captain Johnson coordinated with his remaining officers, trying to establish better defensive positions around Antoine's communication equipment. "You speak of mercy," growled the lead Voidborn soldier in heavily accented galactic standard. "Yet your forces destroyed our fleet at Kepler Station." Antoine never stopped looking at the holographic judges as he replied, "The Federation destroyed military targets after your forces refused to surrender. We took no pleasure in those deaths and we offered quarter to any who laid down their weapons." The alien warrior seemed confused by this response. "Why would you offer quarter to enemies?" "Because enemies can become allies if given the chance," Antoine replied while activating another defensive system. "The Federation includes former enemy species who chose cooperation over continued warfare." Justice Krell's holographic form leaned forward with interest. "Justice Davis, are you suggesting that rehabilitation could apply even to the Voidborn military forces currently attacking your position?" "I am," Antoine answered firmly. "Justice means offering redemption to all who seek it, even those who come bearing weapons." The basement erupted in energy weapons fire again as more Voidborn soldiers poured down the stairs. But something had changed in their attack pattern. Instead of the coordinated assault they had been conducting, the aliens seemed uncertain and divided. Some continued fighting with full intensity while others hesitated before firing. Lisa noticed the change immediately. "Their coordination is breaking down. I think your words are getting to them." Marcus managed to wound one of the attacking soldiers with a well-placed shot. As the alien fell, he expected to see hatred or fury in its eyes. Instead, he saw something that looked almost like confusion and pain. These weren't mindless monsters. They were thinking beings caught up in a system they might not fully understand. Honored colleagues, Antoine continued addressing the court while ducking energy blasts. The evidence shows that the Voidborn Empire operated through a rigid hierarchical system that punished independent thought. Many of their soldiers may have committed atrocities not from personal choice but from systematic indoctrination. The crystalline tree-being judge spoke with a voice like wind through leaves. You are proposing that we distinguish between the Empire as a system and the individuals trapped within that system. Exactly, Antoine replied while helping Johnson tend to a wounded tactical officer. We must destroy the system while saving the people. One of the Voidborn soldiers suddenly lowered his weapon and stepped back from the fighting. He looked around the basement with obvious confusion, as if seeing the situation clearly for the first time. You would truly offer redemption to those who have killed your people? Antoine turned to face the alien warrior directly. I would offer redemption to anyone willing to choose a better path forward. The soldier's black armor began to retract, revealing a face that looked almost human except for silver eyes and pale blue skin. My name is Zeph Corvin. I have served the Empire for 20 years, and I have done terrible things in the name of expansion. Marcus kept his weapon ready but didn't fire as more Voidborn soldiers began lowering their weapons. The fighting in the basement gradually stopped as confusion spread through the enemy ranks. Their mission had been to eliminate the human judge, but now that same judge was offering them something they had never expected to receive. Justice Davis, spoke the ethereal light-being judge. What you are proposing is unprecedented in galactic legal history. Humanity often does unprecedented things, Antoine replied with a slight smile. It's one of our defining characteristics. Through the tactical display, they could see that the fighting outside was also changing. Word of what was happening in the basement was somehow spreading to the other Voidborn forces, and their assault was becoming increasingly disorganized as soldiers struggled with conflicting emotions and orders. Justice Krell called for a brief recess while the other judges consulted with each other in rapid alien languages. The holographic figures flickered as they communicated across vast distances, debating the implications of Antoine's proposal for galactic law. Lisa used the break to check on the wounded tactical officer, while Marcus kept watch on the Voidborn soldiers who had surrendered. Zeph Corvin stood quietly near the stairs, his weapon lowered but not discarded. The other alien soldiers looked to him for guidance, clearly uncertain about what to do next. Why did you stop fighting? Johnson asked the alien leader. Because for the first time in my life someone offered me a choice, Zeph replied quietly. The Empire teaches that there are only two options, victory or death. Your judge has shown us a third option, redemption. Antoine activated his personal communication device and began broadcasting on all frequencies used by Voidborn forces. This is Supreme Tribunal Justice Antoine Davis addressing all Voidborn personnel in this area. I am offering immediate amnesty to any soldiers who lay down their weapons and surrender to Federation authority. The tactical display showed immediate results, as red enemy signatures throughout the neighborhood began changing to yellow neutral status. Entire squads of Voidborn soldiers were laying down their weapons and requesting instructions from their confused commanders. You're ending a war with a legal argument, Marcus observed with amazement. Law is just another form of warfare, Antoine replied. But instead of destroying your enemies, you convince them to become your allies. The galactic judges returned from their consultation with expressions of solemn approval. Justice Krell spoke for the tribunal as a whole. Justice Davis, the court finds your proposal both legally sound and morally exemplary. We hereby dissolve the Voidborn Empire as a political entity while offering rehabilitation programs to all individuals willing to renounce genocidal ideology. The judgment was transmitted instantly across the galaxy, reaching every Federation world and beyond. The Voidborn Empire, which had terrorized the Outer Rim for centuries, officially ceased to exist by legal decree rather than military conquest. Zeph Corvin dropped his weapon completely and approached Antoine's console. Justice Davis, I formally request asylum under Federation law. I wish to testify about Empire war crimes and assist in rehabilitation programs. Antoine smiled and activated the asylum protocols built into his communication system. Request granted. Welcome to the Federation, Citizen Corvin. Through the basement windows, they could see Voidborn dropships beginning to land peacefully in the neighborhood. Soldiers who had come to wage war were instead surrendering to local police and requesting transportation to Federation processing centers. How many do you think will accept rehabilitation? Lisa asked while helping secure the surrendered weapons. Not all of them, Antoine admitted, but enough to make a difference. Sometimes the possibility of redemption is more powerful than any weapon. The quantum communication console began displaying congratulatory messages from across the galaxy as news of the trial's conclusion spread. Species that had lived in fear of void-born expansion were celebrating the end of the Empire while praising humanity's approach to galactic justice. Captain Johnson shook his head in wonder. We came here to arrest a smuggler and ended up witnessing the end of an interstellar war. Antoine laughed while beginning to shut down his emergency systems. Welcome to galactic politics, Captain. Nothing is ever as simple as it appears. As Federation reinforcements finally arrived to secure the area, Marcus realized that he had just witnessed something that would be remembered throughout galactic history. A human judge had ended a war not through superior firepower, but through the simple offer of justice and mercy. 3 days after the battle, Antoine's basement had been transformed into a temporary Federation command center. Ships from a dozen different species orbited Earth as diplomats and military leaders came to witness the peaceful surrender of former void-born forces. The modest Detroit house had become the most important location in the galaxy. Marcus stood in the backyard watching Federation engineers repair the damage from the quantum weapons. The hole in the north wall had been sealed, but scorch marks on the lawn would probably remain for years. It was hard to believe that such a quiet neighborhood had hosted the end of an interstellar war. Detective Williams, called a familiar voice from behind him. Marcus turned to see Zeph Corvin approaching, with a small group of former void-born soldiers. They had traded their black armor for simple Federation civilian clothes, but their silver eyes and pale blue skin still marked them as former enemies. Now they were refugees seeking a new life. How are you adjusting to life as Federation citizens? Marcus asked. Better than expected, Zeph replied with what might have been a smile. Your people have been surprisingly kind to former enemies. We expected prison camps and forced labor. Justice Davis made it clear that redemption means a genuine second chance, Marcus explained. The Federation doesn't believe in punishing people for the crimes of their government. Through the basement windows, they could see Antoine conducting interviews with galactic news services. His decision to show mercy to the void-born forces had made him the most famous human in Federation space. Universities across the galaxy were already requesting copies of his trial transcripts for their law schools. Lisa Carter walked out of the house carrying a Federation communication device. Her temporary assignment to the Anti-Corruption Division had become permanent after she demonstrated an intuitive understanding of alien technology during the battle. She was scheduled to leave for Federation headquarters the next day. The Galactic Senate just finished voting, she announced to the group in the backyard. Antoine has been confirmed as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court by unanimous consent. Marcus felt a surge of pride for his planet and his species. 3 years ago, humans had been newcomers to galactic civilization. Now one of their own would lead the highest court in known space. It was a level of trust and respect that few species achieved even after centuries of Federation membership. Captain Johnson emerged from the house followed by several Federation security officers. His experience during the battle had earned him a promotion to Director of Earth Security Liaison, making him responsible for coordinating between human law enforcement and galactic authorities. The ceremony is scheduled for next week on Prometheus Station, Johnson announced. Antoine will be sworn in as Chief Justice in front of representatives from every Federation species. Zeph Corvin looked thoughtful. Will former void-born citizens be permitted to attend? You're Federation citizens now, Lisa replied firmly. You have the same rights as everyone else. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the repaired lawn as more Federation vehicles arrived to transport equipment and personnel. Antoine's secret basement, courtroom was being carefully disassembled and moved to a secure facility where it would be preserved as a historical monument. Marcus received a notification on his communication device indicating that Federal Security wanted to offer him a position with the Galactic Anti-Terrorism Division. The pay was excellent and the work would take him to worlds he had only dreamed of visiting. But after thinking it over for several days, he had decided to remain in Detroit. Why stay on Earth when you could see the galaxy? Lisa asked when he told her about his decision. Because Earth needs protectors too, Marcus replied. Someone has to make sure that humans stay true to the values that got us this far. Antoine appeared in the backyard carrying a simple travel bag. His formal robes and communication equipment had already been transported to Prometheus Station, but he would remain a Detroit resident whenever his duties permitted. The house would continue to serve as his Earth residence, though with much better security. "Gentleman, Detective Carter," Antoine said formally, "I want to thank you for your service during the recent crisis. Your actions prevented a galactic catastrophe and demonstrated the best qualities of human law enforcement." Johnson stepped forward with a small presentation case. "Actually, we have something for you." Inside the case was a simple badge reading Honorary Detroit Police Officer, along with a certificate signed by the mayor and police commissioner. It wasn't much compared to galactic honors, but Antoine's smile indicated that he understood its significance. "I'll wear this with pride," Antoine said while pinning the badge to his civilian jacket. "It will remind me that justice begins at home in communities where people care about each other." A Federation transport ship landed quietly in the street, its arrival barely disturbing the afternoon calm. Antoine would leave for his swearing-in ceremony, but the house would remain under Federation protection as a symbol of humanity's commitment to galactic justice. Zeph Corvin approached Antoine as he prepared to board the transport. "Justice Davis, many of my former comrades are still struggling with the concept of mercy. They were taught that strength comes only from dominance. Tell them that true strength comes from protecting others," Antoine replied. "The strongest person in any room is the one who uses their power to help those who cannot help themselves." As the transport lifted off toward orbit, Marcus realized that the events of the past few days had changed everything. Humanity was no longer just another member species of the Federation. They had become moral leaders whose example other civilizations would follow. "Think we'll ever see action like that again?" Lisa asked while watching the ship disappear into the sky. "Probably not," Marcus replied. "Most police work is pretty routine compared to preventing galactic wars." Captain Johnson overheard and laughed. "You might be surprised. We've received 3 different requests from Federation worlds asking for human law enforcement advisors. Apparently our approach to criminal justice is considered innovative." The afternoon continued peacefully as Federation personnel finished their work and prepared to leave Earth. The quiet Detroit neighborhood would soon return to normal, with only a few scorch marks and some very unusual basement modifications to remind residents of what had happened. But across the galaxy, the story of the human judge who ended a war with compassion would be told for generations. Children of a dozen species would learn about justice, Antoine Davis and the police, officers who defended him while he chose mercy over vengeance. Marcus walked back into the house one final time before it was sealed for security upgrades. The basement looked ordinary again without all the alien technology, just a simple room where extraordinary things had happened. He could almost hear the echoes of energy weapons and legal arguments that had shaped galactic history. As he locked the front door and handed the keys to the Federation security team, Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had started the week as a simple detective investigating a smuggling tip. He was ending it as someone who had helped prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. 6 months later, Marcus Williams stood in the visitors' gallery of the Galactic Senate Chamber on Prometheus Station, watching Chief Justice Antoine Davis deliver his inaugural address to representatives from over 300 worlds. The massive chamber stretched for miles in every direction, filled with beings whose diversity still amazed Marcus even after months of working with Federation security forces. The ceremony was being broadcast live across the galaxy, reaching billions of citizens who wanted to witness this historic moment. For the first time in Federation history, a member of a recently admitted species would lead the Supreme Court. The significance was not lost on anyone present. "Honored delegates," Antoine's voice carried clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Justice is not the privilege of the powerful or the ancient. It is the birthright of every sentient being, regardless of species, age, or origin." Marcus smiled as he listened to words that had become famous throughout Federation space. Antoine's philosophy of justice had already begun influencing legal systems on dozens of worlds. Law schools were teaching the Davis Doctrine as a new approach to interspecies conflict resolution. Beside Marcus in the gallery sat Zeph Corvin, now serving as director of Voidborne Rehabilitation Services. In the month since his surrender, Zeph had helped over 10,000 former Empire citizens transition to peaceful Federation citizenship. His success rate was unprecedented in galactic history. "Your judge has kept his promises," Zeph said quietly during a pause in the ceremony. "My people are building new lives instead of planning new wars." "He's not just my judge anymore," Marcus replied. "He belongs to the whole galaxy now." The rehabilitation programs had exceeded everyone's expectations. Former Voidborne soldiers were working as engineers, teachers, farmers, and artists across Federation space. Some had even joined Federation security forces, using their military experience to protect the very worlds they had once attacked. Detective Lisa Carter appeared at Marcus's shoulder, wearing the uniform of a Federation anti-corruption investigator. Her work had taken her to 17 different worlds in the past 6 months, hunting down the remnants of various criminal organizations that had flourished during the Voidborne conflict. "How does it feel to watch your old partner become the most important person in the galaxy?" she asked with a grin. "Antoine was always the most important person in the room," Marcus replied. "Now everyone else knows it too." The ceremony continued with representatives from each Federation founding species offering formal recognition of Antoine's appointment. Beings whose civilizations were thousands of years older than humanity spoke with genuine respect about the wisdom and courage he had demonstrated. Captain Johnson, now Director of Earth Security Liaison, joined them in the gallery during a musical interlude performed by a choir of crystalline beings, whose voices created harmonies impossible for most species to produce. His new position had made him one of the most influential humans in Federation government. "Any regrets about staying on Earth?" Johnson asked Marcus. "None," Marcus replied firmly. "Detroit needs good cops more than the galaxy needs another human bureaucrat." Through the massive windows of the Senate chamber, Marcus could see Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel among the stars. The planet that had been ravaged by war just a few years ago was now thriving as a center of Federation culture and learning. Human universities hosted exchange students from across the galaxy, while human ideas about justice and cooperation spread to the farthest reaches of civilized space. Antoine concluded his address with words that would be remembered for centuries. "We stand at the beginning of a new era, not because technology has advanced or territories have expanded, but because we have chosen to build our civilization on the foundation of mutual respect and shared justice." The applause that followed lasted for nearly 10 minutes, with delegates from hundreds of worlds expressing their approval in ways ranging from traditional clapping to complex, bioluminescent displays. The chamber filled with sounds and lights that represented the diversity of galactic civilization. As the formal ceremony concluded, Marcus made his way down to the ceremonial floor where Antoine was receiving congratulations from galactic dignitaries. The new Chief Justice looked exactly the same as the man whose house had been raided 6 months ago, but his presence now commanded the attention of beings who ruled star systems. "Congratulations." "Chief Justice," Marcus said when he reached Antoine's side. "Thank you, Detective Williams." Antoine replied with the same warm smile he had always worn, "But I think congratulations belong to all of us. Humanity has proven that newcomers can contribute as much to galactic civilization as the ancient founding species." A small group of young beings approached, wearing the uniforms of various Federation academies. They represented the first generation to grow up learning about human approaches to justice and conflict resolution. Their education included mandatory courses on the principles that had ended the Voidborne War without massive bloodshed. "Chief Justice Davis," said a young ethereal whose light form pulsed with nervous energy, "we are studying your trial transcripts in our comparative justice class. How did you know that offering mercy would be more effective than demanding surrender?" Antoine considered the question carefully before answering. "I didn't know it would work, but I knew that mercy was the right choice regardless of whether it was effective. Justice isn't about what works. It's about what's right." The student delegates exchanged glances that suggested this answer was both surprising and profound. They had been raised in civilizations where effectiveness was often considered more important than moral principle. The human approach represented a fundamental shift in galactic thinking. As the reception continued, Marcus found himself in conversation with delegates from worlds he had never heard of before. They wanted to know about human law enforcement techniques, human approaches to criminal rehabilitation, and human methods for preventing conflicts before they required military intervention. Your species has a unique perspective on the relationship between individual rights and collective security, observed a delegate from the Helix Confederation. We would like to establish an exchange program between our police academies. Marcus accepted the proposal enthusiastically. In the month since the Voidborn surrender, dozens of worlds had requested human advisors for their law enforcement agencies. Earth was becoming known throughout the galaxy as a source of innovative approaches to public safety and criminal justice. The evening concluded with Antoine taking the ceremonial oath of office in front of the assembled delegates. As he spoke the ancient words that had been used for millennia to install new chief justices, Marcus felt a deep sense of pride in his species and his planet. Later, as the delegates returned to their various worlds, Marcus stood alone on an observation deck watching Earth rotate slowly in the distance. The planet looked peaceful from this height, but he knew that millions of people were working every day to build the kind of society that had produced leaders like Antoine Davis. "Ready to go home?" Lisa asked as she joined him at the observation window. "More than ready," Marcus replied. "Earth has a lot of work to do if we're going to live up to our reputation." As their transport ship departed Prometheus Station for the journey back to Earth, Marcus received a message on his communication device. It was from the Detroit Police Commissioner, informing him that the department had received funding to establish a new interspecies relations division. They wanted Marcus to head the program. The message included a postscript that made him smile. The first class of cadets would include Zeph Corvin's younger brother, a former Voidborn engineer who wanted to become a police officer. The galaxy was changing in ways that would have been impossible to imagine just a few years ago. Through the transport's viewports, Marcus could see ships from dozens of different civilizations traveling peacefully through Federation space. Former enemies worked alongside ancient allies, building a future based on the principles that a small group of humans had defended in a Detroit basement. As Earth grew larger in the viewport, Marcus thought about the anonymous tip that had started everything. Someone had called in a report about illegal alien technology, and in response, humanity had gained a place of leadership in galactic civilization. It was the kind of irony that made him appreciate the unpredictable nature of police work. The transport touched down in Detroit as the sun was setting over the renovated downtown area. Marcus walked through streets that looked exactly the same as they had 6 months ago, but everything was different now. Earth was no longer just another Federation member world. It was home to the Chief Justice of the galaxy, and that made every human citizen a guardian of galactic justice. His first shift back on patrol would begin in the morning, and Marcus was looking forward to the routine of ordinary police work. But he knew that nothing would ever be ordinary again, because humanity had proven that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things when they stood up for what was right.